On 5 News tonight, the government's plans for grammar schools, nuclear tests in North Korea, and the night from hell in the Alps. It's the biggest school shake-up in years. Theresa May says she wants more grammar schools to increase fairness.
I want to see children from ordinary working class families given the chances their richer contemporaries take for granted. That means we need more great schools.
But critics say they'll have exactly the opposite effect, punishing the poorest children.
Some kids might enjoy grammar school. Others, like me, hated every moment of it.
I don't think it's fair for children that come from poorer backgrounds. I think they should keep the schools. We don't need to have the grammar schools.
North Korea announces their biggest nuclear test yet after an underground explosion that triggered an earthquake. Stranded in the sky, the terrifying ordeal for dozens of tourists who had to be rescued from a cable car 12,000 feet up. Also tonight...
And liftoff of OSIRIS-REx.
NASA's latest mission to intercept an asteroid will be speaking to an expert about the possibility it may one day hit Earth. And how's that for a good start? Golds aplenty at the Paralympics, putting Britain second in the medals table. Welcome to 5 News. I'm Julian Drucker. It is the biggest revolution in England's education system for many years, and today Theresa May insisted it will benefit ordinary working-class people. She's unveiled a series of plans that include that controversial revival of grammar schools, and that's facing strong opposition over fears it will see a return of the poorest children being forced into second-rate secondary moderns. Simon Vigar reports on the Prime Minister's radical schools revamp.
The first big policy speech from a rather understated Prime Minister, but you couldn't miss the buzzwords.
A great meritocracy, meritocratic society. Where is the meritocracy? Meritocratic Britain. Merit, not privilege.
She says what we have right now is school selection by house price, and that is less fair than grammars.
I want to see children from ordinary working class families given the chances their richer contemporaries take for granted. That means we need more great schools. This is the plan to deliver them.
The Prime Minister outlined a 4-point plan. She wants universities to be far more involved in sponsoring and supporting their local state schools. And secondly, she wants public and independent schools to do that too. Their privileged charitable status will hinge on it. The PM wants faith schools to be more autonomous. She claims that addresses admissions policy problems, particular to Catholic schools. And finally, selective schools, grammar schools. Theresa May argues a true meritocracy supports the brightest children. There is a lot of opposition.
Selectivity at 11 divides communities, divides children, and ends up giving a good chance to a minority and a less chance to the majority. I don't think that's a very sensible way forward for our country.
The Prime Minister also made this claim.
There will be no return to secondary moderns.
A lot of people don't buy that.
I think by definition, if you have grammar schools, you have whatever they're called, they're secondary moderns. Because what you're doing is you're taking away some of the most academic kids to one small group of schools, and then the other 80% of kids are going to a different group of schools. That's just secondary moderns by a new name.
It is this understated PM's big plan, but her first big task will be getting it through Parliament. Simon Vigar, 5 News.
So that's the politics of today's announcement, but what about the people, the pupils and teachers who will end up learning and working in grammar schools that are branded unfair because they take only the brightest children? Louise Beale has been taking a closer look.
It was double music this morning for Year 8s at Sutton Grammar School in Greater London. Every boy here took and passed their 11+ exam to attend this school. For many, it meant hours of extra work and leaving friends they'd made at primary school. But all these boys told me grammar school suits them.
I like the atmosphere, the fact that everybody is more or less the same level as me in subjects, rather than I stuck out like a sore thumb in my primary school.
But you don't feel like that here?
No, I feel like I fit in perfectly.
It's really nice because all of the people here are like
really contributing to helping me as well as themselves learn, and I didn't quite have that in some of my old schools, so it is quite nice here.
You have to do lots of work outside school to practice for the exams.
And what was that like?
Tough work. I practiced 3 years before the exam.
Gordon Ironside has been head here for nearly 30 years. He welcomes Theresa May's plans, but I asked him if he really thought grammar schools were fair. Children all develop at different rates. How can it be fair to test them at one age and then say, well, you're allowed to come into a grammar school and you're not?
Yeah, OK. We do have further chances to join the school, and indeed significant numbers of students join all the grammar schools locally for their sixth form studies. So there is a second chance, but you can't have people changing every few months. You want to get your cohort of students, work with them. So there has to be an age, and 11 is the transfer age in this area.
Elsewhere in Sutton, grammar schools don't get such a glowing report. Ian Patrick went to one of the 5 in the area, but hated it.
My friends were all at different schools. They seemed to have a, well, I wouldn't say easier life, but more relaxed life than I did. And I was uncomfortable.
Just down the road, we spoke to Jacqueline Brock. She sent her 2 children to local faith schools as she felt the grammar schools were only for the rich.
I think the way they portray grammar schools is for the higher end, if you know what I mean, the higher end children, like parents with money. I don't think it's fair for children that come from poorer backgrounds.
Not everyone will be in tune with the Prime Minister's plans, but as the debate begins, school life here and everywhere will have to carry on regardless. Louise Beale, 5 News.
So is Theresa May creating a bold new education strategy for the future, or is she just reigniting arguments from the 1950s? I'm joined by Lewis Iwu, the Director of Fair Education Alliance, and Priya Dutta from Campaign for Real Education. Lewis, first of all, you're against these plans. What's your main objection?
Well, we're worried that these new plans will create a bigger gap between poor students and their wealthier peers. The evidence suggests that poor students who don't make it into these grammar schools do worse, and that's something we don't want to see happen. But also, this is a distraction from what we think is a really positive agenda to actually improve social mobility, investing in early years, the quality of teaching and careers advice. Let's focus on that and not have a distracting debate.
Priya, there is this scrap heap debate, isn't there? What happens to the 75% of kids who don't get into grammar schools?
I think we actually need to focus on what grammar schools actually are for. So the problem is too many people are focusing on the children who supposedly will be left behind. But of course, the government is proposing an overhaul of the entire system, and I think that is absolutely to be applauded. I think we need to look at what is failing our young children today, and introducing grammar schools will surely be a step in the right direction.
The issue is secondary moderns, isn't it, or whatever they might be called in the future. It lowers standards, does it not, some people would say?
I think that's harking back to a very elitist past. I think nowadays, and the government has said this, that they're looking towards providing better provision for technical and vocational education, and I think that's a very good move as well.
So it would raise standards overall?
Absolutely. Overall, it would definitely raise standards. And the children who have an aptitude for a more academic stream wouldn't get left behind, as they are now.
Lewis, Theresa May might say you're letting dogma and ideology get in the way of children's potential. What do you say to that?
I mean, with all respect to Priya, the world has changed, and we can't allow a significant section of our population to be put into a category of purely vocational subjects. The reason why we've had, for example, the EBAC reforms is to ensure that everyone has a balanced education, and saying at an early age, some students, you go off here and go to really good schools, and academic education's for you, leaving others behind, I think is going to leave people stranded in a incredibly competitive global labour market.
I mean, you're absolutely right. I think the world has changed an awful lot, and unfortunately, we are languishing at the bottom of the OECD league tables. So I don't know how many people know this, but our grandparents' generation performed better in these academic tests than today's cohort of 15-year-olds. Now, that is of great concern.
But the policy solution isn't grammar schools, it's to improve all schools everywhere. I mean, let's look at London.
And grammar schools will raise the overall standard.
Well, let's look at London, and this is a point that Sir Michael Walshaw made. London has made great strides in ensuring that as many people as possible in disadvantaged communities, in places like Tower Hamlets, do incredibly well, and we've seen fantastic results in London. without grammar schools. So it's possible to raise standards, again, if you invest in the quality of teaching and the quality of leadership, in trying to make sure that every child gets a good education. You don't need grammar schools, and that's not the result. And this doubling down because you allege that there are inequalities because of house prices and how people get into the system is an argument to fix that. It's not an argument to introduce more selection and more inequality.
Would
Just those people who 20, 30, 40 years ago didn't get into a grammar school, that they said has affected their lives, what would you say to those people?
Well, the world indeed has changed, and now we're looking towards lifelong learning. The provision of education is so totally different now. You have access to the entire world's knowledge at your fingertips via technology.
Just quickly, Lewis, finally.
Well, it's really interesting on that point. Look at the evidence, and this is important. We always look at the evidence. People who didn't attend grammar schools, if you look at Kent, for example, their lifetime earnings significantly less than comparative students in areas which aren't selective, right? So this inequality doesn't just manifest itself when you get in, or where you fail to get in, rather. It manifests itself throughout someone's lifetime.
Lewis, thank you very much. Hugely divisive issue. Thank you both for talking to us today.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Now, a British woman who's been held in Iran for nearly 6 months has been sentenced to 5 years in jail, according to her husband. Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe had been accused of planning to topple the Iranian regime. She was arrested at Tehran's international airport as she tried to return to Britain after a holiday visiting her family with her young daughter. French prosecutors say 3 women who were arrested last week on terror charges were sent by so-called Islamic State. The suspects were held in connection with a car loaded with gas canisters. It was found in Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Authorities say they'd been planning to attack a major railway station there this week. Depending what you read, they are either miracle drugs or potential killers. Well, today, one of the most comprehensive studies yet into statins has declared them not just safe, but hugely beneficial. It says researchers exaggerated the side effects of the pills while underestimating the positives. Our health correspondent, Catherine Jones, has the details.
Staying healthy and active is important to Steve Bowley. His father had 2 heart attacks in his 50s, and like him, Steve has high cholesterol. So as well as exercising, Steve takes a statin pill every day and credits the drug with changing his outlook as well as his health.
I think I would have led a life worrying what was around the corner. Whereas now, I still know that at some point I'm going to die, but it's going to be, hopefully, in my 90s or my 100s rather than in my 50s.
Statins lower so-called bad cholesterol, and that helps prevent heart disease. 6 million people take them in the UK, and today's study predicts statins will prevent 80,000 heart attacks and strokes in that group. But the researchers also estimate there are 2 to 4 million more people who'd benefit, but who don't currently take the drugs. And the scientists believe it's headlines like these, reporting studies which emphasise the side effects of statins, which have put people off.
I think that there are 2 sides to every story, but what they need to be is based on the evidence. So when one looks at the evidence, it's quite clear about the magnitude of the benefits and the magnitude of the harms.
A few experts have disagreed, the British Medical Journal saying this new review of statins still doesn't contain enough data about side effects. But this GP is glad she can now quote the findings to the many patients she sees who object to trying them.
Indeed, I had one just this morning who said, well, my family are really dead set against it. And the great news is that today I was able to say, you know all that advice I've been giving you for the last 10 years? Here it is in black and white.
Whether to take a medicine or not is a personal decision for each individual. Steve feels he's made an informed choice with the best available evidence of the risks and benefits, and now that evidence on statins is clearer for everyone. Catherine Jones, 5 News.
Coming up on 5 News tonight, the tourists who got more than they bargained for on a sightseeing trip in the Alps. And 100 metres wide and heading this way, NASA's latest mission to intercept an asteroid. We'll see you after the break. Welcome back. You're watching 5 News tonight. There has been international condemnation of North Korea after it successfully carried out its latest and biggest nuclear test. The news was announced on state TV in typically enthusiastic style. Across the border in South Korea, scientists monitoring the blast said that it was the country's largest nuclear test yet, producing a 5.3 magnitude tremor. North Korea has been testing nuclear technology since 2006, despite a UN ban. And today, the US, UK and even Russia were joined in their outrage, describing it as dangerous and provocative. Well, a little earlier, I spoke to Jean Lee, who's a global fellow with the Wilson Center think tank specializing in North Korea. She's based in Seoul, in South Korea. I started by asking her how significant this development is.
You know, there have been so many provocations, so many ballistic missile launches that it can be hard to lose sight of what makes this one significant. This was an underground nuclear test, the second one this year, so the fifth over the past 10 years. But what's significant about this one is experts are saying that the payload, the load was quite a bit stronger than past nuclear tests. So this is a stronger device, a more powerful device. Now the North Koreans are claiming that they've figured out how to make that device small enough to mount on a ballistic missile. So this has been a significant challenge for North Korea's nuclear scientists, but they claim that they have mastered that. That would certainly make their ballistic missiles more of a threat. Now, the other thing that is very concerning is the fact that this is the second nuclear test this year. So they're picking up the pace. And with every nuclear test, their technology improves. So it certainly raises the concern about the pace of the development of North Korea's nuclear program.
Jean, what's the mood in South Korea? I mean, South Korea, China, America fear these developments. I mean, how is your country feeling today?
So, you know, China, very interestingly, was fairly quick to come out in opposition. Japan, obviously, very tough words right away. South Korea, the military officials convened an emergency session. They did put their military on alert, and very interesting, did threaten a preemptive strike if there's any indication that North Korea would use the nuclear weapons. However, I must say that on the streets of Seoul, it is life as usual, almost no sense of panic whatsoever. People are fairly oblivious to the fact that there was a nuclear test in North Korea, and I think it goes to show just how common it is, or how comfortable South Koreans have become in living with this threat from North Korea.
And how much should the world fear North Korea, do you think? This is a small stockpile, isn't it, compared to what, say, America and China has? I mean, are they really that threatening?
You know, the North Koreans are very aware that to actually target the United States or U.S. territory or South Korea or Japan with a weapon like this would ultimately be its suicide as well. That said, there are concerns that any kind of miscalculation could result in another conflict. For example, South Korea and the U.S. are certainly mulling over how to answer this provocation, how to really show the North Koreans that they won't be cowed by this, and yet to do it in a way that won't trigger any kind of a conflict.
And when there's no dialogue with North Korea, I mean, what can the international community actually do about this, do you think?
As you know, the UN Security Council has enacted some of the toughest sanctions on North Korea, and that has not stopped North Korea from developing its program. So certainly in the days and the weeks ahead, we will watch to see what some of the regional leaders are going to do as they huddle together to try to figure out a strategy to try to contain North Korea and to try to convince North Korea to abandon this program.
We will see. Good to talk to you, Jean Lee, a North Korea expert. Thank you very much, Jean.
Thank you.
Now, a group of tourists are back on solid ground today after enduring what would no doubt be many people's worst nightmare. The sightseers had been high up in their cable cars in the French mountains when they stalled. Emergency crews were rescued but had to leave 33 people trapped in their capsules for the entire night. Warren Nettleford has the story.
These reassuring arms are leading this tourist to an ambulance. This tight hug shows just how thankful this woman is she's now safe. Because for more than 16 hours, both of them weren't down here. They were up there in the Alps, trapped in cable cars at an altitude of more than 12,000 feet, suspended above the snow-capped glaciers of Mont Blanc. Yes, it was very long. We spent something like 15 hours in the cable car, 15 hours in a space where you couldn't even stretch your legs. With 4 of us inside, it really wasn't big. One blanket between 2 wasn't enough, so I had a chill. I threw up. I wasn't feeling good. But then we exchanged our coats, so we weren't scared. Yesterday afternoon, it seems, the cables carrying the passenger-filled pods became tangled, meaning the cars were effectively stuck. Rescuers in helicopters were dispatched. 48 tourists were hoisted to safety from the cars, and more than 30 who were closer to ground descended using ropes.
They tried to take us with a helicopter, but the fog came in, so the 2 rescuers stayed with us, and then we did a belay after we decided there was no other way to get down, and thank goodness that they were able to help us down. Scared? No, just tired, wanted to get out of there.
But 33 other tourists had to stay in position overnight as bad weather halted the operation. They were handed blankets, food and water in the meantime. But by early this morning, their nightmare was over and there were no reported injuries. Strong winds may have been to blame for the tangled cables. This trip to the mountain is one that these tourists won't forget. Warren Nettleford, 5 News.
A probe that will land on an asteroid millions of miles away, scoop up some samples of space rock, then fly them all the way back to Earth, has been launched by NASA. It's hoping OSIRIS-REx and its payload will help answer some fundamental questions, not least whether it really could smash into the Earth. Ruth Liptrot reports.
And liftoff of OSIRIS-REx.
It's a 7-year mission that hopes to answer some of the universe's biggest questions about how our planet and solar system were formed.
To boldly go to the asteroid Bennu.
The OSIRIS-REx probe blasted off from Florida on a NASA Atlas rocket in the early hours of the morning. Its goal? To retrieve a rock sample from a 500-metre wide asteroid called Bennu. So how will it do it? Well, it'll take 2 years to get there, but when it does, a mechanical arm will extend from the probe and make contact with the asteroid. It'll then gather loose fragments, which will be sent back to Earth in a parachuted capsule. But what story can a few grams of matter possibly tell us? Well, the organic chemistry of the asteroid might be able to tell us something about the origins of life as we know it.
What will happen when the samples come back will be decades of study. And that's what's really exciting about it. The ability to hang on to those pristine materials, pose questions and go to them and have them answer them for us.
But it also has another job, one that's potentially even more important, because it's possible that this could come hurtling out of the sky and hit Earth in the next 200 years. It's set to pass by in 2135, but could hit us the next time it passes. If Bennu did hit Earth, it would mean massive devastation. The good news is NASA says the chances of it happening are 1 in 2,700. OSIRIS-REx hopes to make it even less likely. Ruth Liptrot, 5 News.
Joining me now is Tom Kurz, who's an astronomer with the Royal Observatory in Greenwich. How exciting is this mission, first of all, Tom?
Well, it's incredibly exciting because it's an opportunity not only to get a close-up look, probably the closest ever view of an asteroid's surface, but also to bring a little bit back. And because this is an asteroid that actually encounters the Earth, it's feasible that one day astronomers will be holding a piece of this asteroid as they actually watch it pass by.
What do we know about this asteroid that it's heading towards?
We know it's pretty big. This asteroid is over 1/4 of a mile wide, so it's pretty large, although it apparently is potentially somewhat lighter than it should be, so there may be large cavities inside the asteroid, something that the mission is going to investigate, whether that's possible. We also know that this asteroid is probably relatively unchanged since the formation of our solar system over 4 billion years ago. So it gives us an opportunity to look back in time and actually to bring back a primordial piece of our solar system to study here on Earth.
And what can it actually tell us?
It could tell us any number of things, but the really exciting things it could tell us about are the origin of life here on Earth. The surface of this asteroid is peppered with the sorts of substances, the sorts of chemical substances that we think may have rained down onto the early Earth. It's very plausible that asteroids like Bennu actually delivered not just water, but actually the elements or the basic building blocks of life to Earth early in the solar system's history.
Should we be worried about the possibility this asteroid could hit Earth, though?
Well, I wouldn't be too concerned for the immediate future. I mean, this asteroid does encounter Earth every 6 years or so. There is going to be, in the middle of the 22nd century, the potential for an impact, although even then it's very slim. By studying the asteroid up close with the OSIRIS-REx mission, astronomers will be able to much better determine what the likelihood of that impact actually is. And I think it's fair to say, as a general rule, the more that we tend to study near-Earth objects like these sorts of asteroids, the more the probability actually goes down. So being optimistic, I would suggest that this is probably unlikely to be a problem for us, and certainly in our lifetimes.
Just tell us what you brought in. We have a prop here on the desk.
We do, yes. We've got a fragment here of an actual meteorite, and the makeup of this meteorite is not dissimilar probably from the internal makeup of asteroid Bennu. So this is an opportunity just to see what this would be like on the inside. However, the sample that's going to be coming back to us in the year 2023 will actually be a powdery material, only 60 grams of this powdery regolith on the surface of the asteroid, which is going to be brought back. So not something from the inside, but rather from the surface. So with meteorites here on the Earth and also this fresh surface material, we really start to build it up.
Exciting times. Thank you very much indeed, Tom. Thanks for that. Thanks for the prop as well. Whatever Britain's Olympians can do, it seems our Paralympians can more than match. Last night in Rio, Dame Sarah Storey made history by winning her 12th gold medal. And today the golds just kept on coming. Sangeeta Kandola has been watching the best of the action.
Behind the smiles, there was pressure too on our Paralympians to perform after Team GB's medal haul success a few weeks ago in Rio. Well, they haven't disappointed.
And it is a new Paralympic record. Superb ride there.
Pedalling fast past the post this afternoon to take Britain's first gold of the day in Rio and showing real leg power, cyclist Sophie Thornhill, who's partially sighted, and Helen Scott took gold in the time trial. And it was an uplifting day too for Great Britain's Zoe Newson, powerlifting her way to bronze after lifting twice her body weight. On the track and in the pool, our Paralympians proved their power, going for gold with consecutive overnight successes.
It's going to be gold for Ollie Hind of Great Britain.
Ollie Hind earned gold in the 400 metres freestyle. That was equalled by Beth Firth, who broke the world record in the 100 metres backstroke.
And this final is over already.
The night, though, went to Paris cyclist Dame Sarah Storey. She becomes the most successful female Paralympian of all time, taking her 12th gold medal 24 years after her first one, for the 3,000 metres individual pursuit final.
So yeah, I'm coming to terms with the idea that with the games have started and I'm here and I've got a gold medal, and that's added to a tally of the previous 24 years. It's just been a perfect day.
Tonight, all eyes will be on Team GB's Johnny Peacock, hoping to defend his title in the 100 metres final later. Sangeeta Kandola, 5 News.
That's it. Kirsty's got the weather next. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.